The exploration of space has always been something handled by government agencies, with not just anyone being able to pay a handsome amount of money to tag along on some or other mission being launched. But it appears as if things are beginning to change now, with quite a few private organizations breaking this barrier and ensuring that one day all of us can feel what it's like to float around in an anti-gravity chamber. So what does the future of space travel currently look like, and how can we expect it to change in the coming days? Well, whether you're a space fanatic or just want to know more about the future of the exploration industry, stay right where you are, as we're about to explore everything there is to know about the future of space travel. So strap yourselves in and get ready for a bumpy ride as things are about to get exciting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. Our need to explore. The exploration industry used to be quite important back in the day, with many countries lacking the spices, foods, and resources to live a comfortable life. This was before the time of refrigerators and overnight postage. After all, and resulted in a number of world powers launching an effort to travel across the globe and set up trading stations. This also unfortunately resulted in the colonization of a number of smaller populations, with European settlers often taking that land for their own despite the fact that it was being lived on. A couple of generations later, we're in a much better position, with the majority of colonized lands now lying in the control of the populations that first held them, with European influences, of course. And while this may sound a tad strange to discuss in a video about space exploration, this is an important history to keep in mind. You see, as much as we had the desire to explore back then, we also had the need, and this went beyond the greed of the world powers in snatching up land at a moment's notice. It's because of this earlier exploration of the world that we were able to build a comfortable livelihood. We now have access to resources from all across the globe because of the hard work that was done by those before us. Just think of the various items you use every day and where they were actually made. You might find that without these trade routes, things would be a lot different. But more than anything, humanity has an innate desire to explore and discover things that were previously unknown. So when the globe was pretty much covered, other than the depths of the sprawling oceans, which are still out of reach, we turned our attention to space. Similarly to how the world powers went about exploring the Earth, space programs overseen by government agencies were established, giving only them the authority to travel to the great unknown. The capital available for the country to make use of it is a lot more than an individual space fanatic after all, so this made sense overall. And after an incredible space race between the United States and the Soviet Union, we finally crossed that threshold in July of 1969 by successfully landing Neil Armstrong and his ragtag group of astronauts on the moon. A couple of years later, and the Outer Space Treaty was established, stating that space is free to explore, with no nations being able to make sovereign claims to the moon and other planetary bodies. Clearly something that needed to be said, considering our crazy past of colonization and refusal of rights to minorities. This also opened the doors for many private bodies to establish their own space organizations, with the intention of one day making space exploration available for the average Joe and Jane. But where are all those companies now? The establishment of Blue Origin. First up was the creation of an aerospace company in the year 2000 by the name of Blue Origin, which was actually established by the former CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, although it was never as famous as some of the bodies that followed it. Blue Origin was actually been making waves over the last few months by stating that it will soon be launching a mission that is sure to be the first step in securing space exploration as an activity for all. The company mantra has always been gradatim for reciter, after all, which translated from Latin to English comes to mean step by step, ferociously. Having applied this mantra to their everyday operations, Blue Origin has become a powerhouse in the industry of space exploration. And according to a company spokesperson, the need for space exploration has never been higher, considering the amount of anthropomorphic carbon dioxide that is currently in the atmosphere. The Earth is facing a pretty steep climate crisis. With fire tornadoes currently spreading across the United States, we need to find a way to alleviate the pressure on our home world. So while Blue Origin is very much focused on space travel at the moment with their upcoming mission, the eventual plan is to explore the final frontier for asteroids and planets from which resources can be mined. Bringing these back to Earth will no doubt alleviate mining pressure and eventually bring down the levels of carbon in the atmosphere. Speaking of space travel though, the inaugural launch by Blue Origin of its New Shepard rocket is set to take place in just under a week's time. When July 20th, 2021 finally comes around, this will be the first time that any privately funded aerospace company has succeeded in sending men and women above the carbon line, which is said to be be the true boundary between the Earth's atmosphere and space. And as it turns out, Jeff Bezos is so comfortable with the progress of Blue Origin that he himself will be on board during the inaugural flight. Since rockets such as New Shepard have been created to both launch and land with reusable parts, this has significantly cheapened the cost of traveling to space, which has always been the reason why it would be out of reach for us average folk. We should all be holding our collective breaths when this launch takes place, as it could very well secure us a space vacation in the years to come. The workings of Virgin Galactic. Jeff Bezos isn't the only billionaire leading the privatization of space travel. Back in 2004, Richard Branson went on to establish Virgin Galactic, which is an aerospace company with similar intentions to Blue Origin. But while Blue Origin is mostly fixed on the mining of resources in the future, Virgin Galactic is more focused on what space travel could mean for the commercial sector. The company actually went on to launch their own inaugural space flight a few days ago in an effort to beat Blue Origin to the punch. As such, they became the first privately funded company to ever reach the edge of space. Since their Spaceship 2 was not powerful enough to reach beyond the Kármán line though, Blue Origin still has a shot at securing themselves this title. Either way though, these are two examples of massive steps being taken by the private sector to commercialize suborbital spaceflight, which means that the following could very well be possible in the coming days. Number 1. Commercial suborbital trips. Considering the steps that have already been taken by both Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, it looks as if commercial suborbital travel will be the first subsector of the space tourism industry to develop in the coming days. Now that Richard Branson has communicated to the world that this is indeed possible, with Jeff Bezos set to improve this trip significantly by traveling past the Kármán line, things are really looking up for those who have always dreamed of going to space. Although both companies have been using different launch systems, they both allow for an incredible view of the Earth, allow for passengers to feel weightlessness for a couple of minutes before returning home. And although Axios has reported that interest in suborbital space travel has been waning in the past couple of years, there's no doubt that witnessing both Branson and Bezos will most certainly get the energy up once more. The great thing about either company commercializing trips such as these is that the income gained from doing so could be used to further develop their space programs, resulting in even greater advances in the future. With more capital to sink into research and development, the cheaper these commercial flights can become, until finally the vast majority of the population be able to afford a trip into the final frontier. Number 2. Orbital vacations. Another possibility that's been thrown out there is the notion of orbital vacations, which can be thought of as a commercialized space flight which, instead of returning to Earth in a few minutes, will stay in orbit for a couple of days. This is what companies such as SpaceX, as headed by the eccentric Elon Musk, have always wanted to achieve. In fact, the company has also partnered with Space Adventures to send 4 tourists to low Earth orbit for a few days in early 2022. Musk hasn't mentioned whether this timeline has been delayed by the global health situation, but either way, it's most certainly in the cards. Another notion that's been played with involves the building of orbital infrastructure in space, similar to the International Space Station. This would be incredibly expensive and very difficult to do, but the eventual plan would be to have a hotel in orbit that many would pay an exorbitant amount of money to stay in. This is nowhere near to being ready right now though, but considering the steps that have already been taken, this may be closer than we originally thought. Number 3. Commercial colonies. Last but not least, there has been talk of striking some rules from the Outer Space Treaty to allow for the commercial colonization of certain orbital bodies, such as the Moon and Mars. Once done, this would allow for companies such as SpaceX to offer passenger trips to the colonies in an attempt to jumpstart another human settlement. It's space exploration at its best, and since Mars is known to be uninhabitable, the colonization of the planet wouldn't be unethical in any way, shape, or form. But should we be doing this rather than concentrating on mending our own world? That's a question for another day. What do you think of the future of space travel? Be sure to let us know in the comments section below.